Hi there, my name is John Green. This is Crash Course World History, and today we're going to talk about the Dark Ages, possibly the most egregious Eurocentrism in all of history, which is really saying something. We're Europe. The prime meridian runs through us. We're in the middle of every map, and we get to be a continent even though we're not a continent. But let's begin today with a pop quiz. What was the best year of your life? And what was the worst year? Mr. Green, best 1994, worst 1990. Oh, me from the past. It gets so much better and also so much worse. For worst year, I'm gonna go with 2001. Best year, 2006. All right, now it's your turn, dear pupil. Share your best and worst years in comments during the intro. Right, so what you'll quickly find is that your worst year was someone else's best year. So too with history. The period between 600 and 1450 CE is often called the Middle Ages in Europe because it came between the Roman Empire, assuming you forget about the Byzantines, and the beginning of the modern age. And it's sometimes called the Dark Ages because it was so purportedly unenlightened. But was the age really so dark? Depends on what you find depressing. If you like cities and great poetry, then the Dark Ages were indeed pretty dark in Europe. But if, like me, your two favorite things are not dying from wars and not dying from anything else, then the Dark Ages actually weren't that bad, at least until the plague came in the 14th century. And meanwhile, outside of Europe, the Dark Ages were truly an age of enlightenment. But we'll get boring Europe out of the way first. Let's go to the thought bubble. Medieval Europe had less trade, fewer cities, and less cultural output than the original Roman Empire. London and Paris were fetid fire traps with none of the planning or sewage management of places 5,000 years older like Mohenjo-Daro in the Indus Valley civilization, let alone Rome. But with fewer powerful governments, wars were at least smaller, which is one reason why Europeans living in medieval times— thought bubble, I knew you were gonna do that! Anyway, people in medieval times lived slightly longer. Life expectancy was 30 than Europeans during the Roman Empire, when life expectancy was 28. Instead of centralized governments, Europe in the Middle Ages had feudalism, a political system based on reciprocal relationships between lords, who owned lots of land, and vassals, who protected the land and got to dress up as knights in exchange for pledging loyalty to the lords. The lords were also vassals to more important lords, with the most important of all being the king. Below the knights were peasants, who did the actual work on the land in exchange for protection from bandits and other threats. Feudalism was also an economic system, with the peasants working the land and keeping some of their production to feed themselves while giving the rest to the landowner whose land they worked. The small-scale local nature of the feudal system was perfect for a time and place where the threats to people's safety were also small-scale and local. But of course, this system reinforces the status quo. There's little freedom and absolutely no social mobility. Peasants could never work their way up to lords, and they almost never left their villages. Thanks, Thought Bubble. One more point that's really interesting from a world history perspective. This devolution from empire to localism has happened in lots of places at lots of different times. And in times of extreme political stress, like after the fall of the Han Dynasty in China, power tends to flow into the hands of local lords who can protect the peasants better than the state can. We hear a lot about this in Chinese history and also in contemporary Afghanistan, but instead of being called feudal lords, these landlords are called warlords. Eurocentrism striking again. The other reason the Dark Ages are called dark is because Europe was dominated by superstition and by boring religious debates about like how many angels can fit on the head of a pin. Crash Course is produced and directed by Stan Muller. Our script supervisor is Danica Johnson. The graphics team is Thought Bubble, and the show is written by my high school history teacher Raoul Meyer and myself. Last week's